We are today into this session, which is teaching methodologies in architecture and planning education, best practices. I'm Manoj Mathur presenting to you. This is what I'm going to talk about. Very briefly, I'm going to cover these different topics. And they are, first of all, is knowledge supply, the teacher as plumber. So I begin here because I think mostly all the time for me, it has been a custom that I always reiterate for myself. It's almost like a morning prayer. I always reiterate for myself what I am doing here, what is my job, what is my responsibility. And that actually puts me into a perfect situation of figuring out what I have to do. Okay. So yeah, you can laugh about the fact that the teacher as plumber, you'll get to know how apt it is. The second topic, the second issue is the desired outcomes. Obviously, when we are talking about outcome-based education and we are talking about the best practices, we got to be pretty clear about what is the desired outcome. And this desired outcome is not to be confused with whatever is written as the desired outcome or the learning outcome for each subject that might figure in your curriculum. I'm talking about a desired outcome, which is, you can say, the gross outcome, the overall outcome. At the end of the program that the student has entered, okay, what is it that we are looking for to happen to the student? Okay. The third is a teacher's toolkit. What does the teacher do? How does the teacher make this happen? And for that, I have got a three-step formula. There can be many names for it, but after the current fashion, it's an alliteration of sort. So I have called it engage, enable, ennoble. Okay. Three steps. The steps more or less always remain three, but here, this is the name I have given them. The fourth is leading by example. The best is to practice. And at the end, I will close with what is going to happen in future. So while the first four will be about what I have been doing, the last one will be about how I think all of this constitutes a good preparation for the challenges that we are going to face in the coming years. And it's challenges which the entire higher education sector in India will face, and particularly because of already the distinct way in which architecture is taught, it will probably be an even greater challenge for us. So moving on. Let's talk about teacher as plumber. So, it's like a prayer every day. I mean, no, you kind of have to think, what am I here for? What is my task? What is my responsibility? And if we go through this prayer, then I think more or less you will never have a problem of finding what is the best method to go about this. Okay, so what does the plumber do? So the plumber plans the pipe routes, and most importantly, the plumber minimizes the bends. Okay, bend the bend always interferes with the pressure and the speed. Okay, optimizes the pipe diameter, thickness, and material. How much of water must flow? Okay, at what speed must it flow? At what pressure it must flow? And therefore, for that speed, that pressure, that amount of water, what should be the strength of the pipe? What should be the diameter of the pipe? What's a good material so that the pipe itself does not, corrode or disintegrate very quickly and has to be replaced, and so on. Inserts, reducers, and valves. This is a very important part. So while there might be a channel, for the water to flow, and you will very soon come to know what is this water I'm talking about. So while there is a channel of a particular diameter, it's not necessary that everyone wants the water at the same speed, in the same quantity, and the same pressure. And therefore, you need to be branching out, and therefore, sometimes you need to put in reducers which actually reduce the diameter of the pipe, and sometimes it needs to be completely shut off. Okay, there probably you need a valve. So that valve actually either lets the flow, or it can regulate the flow, or it can completely shut off. And the reverse can also happen, that sometimes you end up with the pressure actually being less. And so you have to install a pressure pump to actually push the water faster to someone who really needs it. And all of this time, going through the bends and the diameter of the pipes and the reducers and the valves, and all of this time ensures that there is no leakage from the joints. So none of that which needs to pass should actually waste away by leaking from the joints. Okay. And finally, after all this plumbing, which seems to be so, downbeat, the plumber only does it. The plumber presents all of this water flowing in an attractive faucet. Okay. So that faucet, which you see in your bathroom, might be, at least a Jaguar, or, who knows, some imported brand. Very attractive looking, very easy to operate, and possibly if it is maybe Kohler or something, it might have a music attachment also, who knows, but definitely with an aerator and with variable flow. Okay, so these are things which the plumber does. And these are exactly the things which a teacher also has to be doing. So if I'm talking about teaching methods, right, the things to keep in mind is that every student that we have can learn something. It's innate. I mean, we cannot deny it. We cannot say that somebody can learn nothing. Because first of all, somebody has come into our program, which is already not easy, and has come at the expense of someone else who's not as good. So it's a talented person, a person with the right prerequisites, the right attitude, and so on, the right aptitude. So every student that we have can learn something, sometime, somewhere. The somehow is up to the teacher. Every student is surrounded by a huge body of knowledge, a global pool of knowledge of these disciplines of architecture and planning. We've been doing it since humanity began. We've been doing architecture and planning since humanity began. And every passing year, we add one annular ring of new knowledge to it. And it's a storehouse which just keeps growing. We learn new things and we add it to the knowledge. We learn another new thing and we add it to the knowledge. Sometimes we even learn to our chagrin that the knowledge that we had added was actually not correct. And therefore, there's a need to discredit that knowledge and finally discard it, and so on. But that knowledge pool is huge. And every student needs access to this global pool of knowledge through a fountainhead. And I use that particular word because it should strike a chord. Many of us have been lured into this profession, for better or for worse, by that word. Okay, it was something which had such a great impact on youth at one time that many of us thought that yes, this is exactly the way we want to be, and that's why we actually became architects. Just happens that I never read it. And I only came to know about it when I had actually joined architecture. But nonetheless, I was expected to have read it. That was very clearly told to me by seniors. Teaching transmits doses of knowledge through conduits and controls. Okay, so that water I was talking about is the water of knowledge out of the global pool. So that water flows out of the global pool, and the teacher designs the plumbing. How much of water should flow at what time, and who should be getting it, and who should be controlling how much actually comes from there. That all is the design of the teacher, and that is the teacher's work. The teacher himself or herself is not the pool of knowledge. The teacher is only the media, is only the medium rather. Teachers are the media. Teacher is the medium by which the student can access that pool of knowledge. On the other hand, every student is capable to design, some more, some less. Especially when we are talking of architecture and we're talking about habitat, why even student, why even human beings? Every living thing is capable of making their own houses. Birds make their nests, bees make their hives. Yes, lions don't make their dens, but then lions are strong enough to capture whatever looks like a den and don't allow anybody else to use it. They just keep it for themselves. So they know how to find their homes. So we have an innate capability that's been wired in by God, that we can actually make our homes. That's the reason why we are still living, because that ability is there. Otherwise, if we were to go by what our government says, that so many percentage of this country are actually homeless, then you may wonder that if they are homeless, why are they even living? How are they even surviving? They're only surviving because they have this innate capability to create their own shelter, whether you like to call it a home, whether it meets with your standards or not. Everyone's innate capability to make their own home is required for equitable nation building. This is again something which I believe strongly, is that the figure that we put to how many homeless we have in this country is completely wrong. Okay, they are not homeless. Everybody has a home, whether it's big, small, strong, weak, okay, temporary, permanent. There might be many qualifiers to that, but everybody has a home to themselves, and it is because of their capability that this entire nation can actually survive, can actually live, can actually exist. Everyone benefits when the most capable perform to potential capacity. This is where the teaching comes in. Okay, so as I said, some have more capacity, some have less, some have more capability, and some have less capability. Okay, and when we admit students to the architecture program, and we say that yes, you have to have the aptitude, that's when you'll be admitted. We are actually saying that you are more capable to become the person who is going to provide the benefit of shelter or of building or of architecture to more than just yourself. You can do it for others as well. Learning is needed to optimally convert capability into capacity. That is the architecture program. So what are we looking for in our students as the final desired outcomes? We are looking for qualities, actually. So the teacher, as I said, was doing the plumbing, of providing the piping so that the knowledge can flow out of the pool and it can then reach the student. So what is at the end of it? What do we want this knowledge to do? What do we want the student to imbibe? What should the student be capable of doing at the end of this architecture and planning education? So first of all is gaining a broad spectrum knowledge, that's the wrong spelling, of the arts, sciences, and humanities. There's no architecture in this sentence, please note. Okay, the arts, sciences, and humanities. And as a tool for starting the education of architects is very important that they become a little more knowledgeable, a little more conversant with all these human endeavors. I see these as things which human beings do. And in your understanding of human beings who are going to be the people who are going to design for, it's important to know that what all are the excellent things that human beings have been doing. So broad spectrum means that it has to be across the board. It has to be very, very wide. It has to cover lots and lots of things. And naturally, when you are wide, you cannot do it in depth. Yes, agreed. But at least you are aware that these things exist. So arts means the performing arts, the visual arts, films, theater, painting, sculpture, photography, music, what have you, all the arts, the sciences, mathematics, very important. You can say the primary science. Some people say that's where it all began. The physics, the chemistry, the astronomy, the economics, and so on. Humanities, the studies of anthropology, the study of history, terrain, geography, human migration through the ages across the continents. Why is that important for an architect to know? It's important for the architect to know because that is very important to understand the context. How did we come to be in this context? How did people get to be living in the way they are living? The second important point after gaining this knowledge is to retain the knowledge gained in inactive periods. Okay, so as a task, this is something we have to specifically address. Gaining knowledge is not difficult. You open the tap and it will flow. But here we are talking about after having reached the student, what is the system by which it stays in place? It actually does not drain out. When you're in active period, when you're in the position where you're actually using the knowledge in real time, yes, it is there. But when you stop using it, how is it retained? Retrieving the retained knowledge. So if you have been inactive for some time, the knowledge which has been retained, can you actually bring it back? Can you remember? Simple. Can you recall something that you learned some time ago? You know somewhere it is at the back of your mind. Okay. Sometimes you remember words, stray words, you don't remember the complete word, or sometimes you remember a word, but one of the letters from that is missing, and you keep saying, it's something like that. So mnemonics comes in here. Okay. Ways of remembering come in here. These are things that have to be inculcated. Applying knowledge as appropriate to the context. This is one of the very important parts of the knowledge system. So this calls for judgment, this calls for discernment, this calls for making choices that I have this knowledge, and in this particular case, that knowledge will be useful for me to find a solution to a problem that I may have. And finally, augmenting knowledge on the go. That's important because while you are doing something with the application of knowledge, things may come up which may actually add to your knowledge bank. Okay, how do you recognize, oh my God, this is something new that's happening. I should learn it and I should store it for future use. That is augmenting knowledge. All of these things are part of the system we want to develop in the student of knowledge which can be useful, which can then be applied. You're going to have a session, I think, on the 5th day by architect Yatin Pandya, which is, I think, exactly about this, learning and applying. Okay, so I will not be talking more about this. I'm just saying that learning and applying is the ecosystem that we have to develop in the student. These are the skill sets that we are talking about. And you will see how immediately it applies to, certainly to architectural design studio, where the connection is very, very visible. But I'm saying that it is the same pattern which works in every subject class. It works in structures class, it works in construction class, it works in history class, it works in whatever energy and environment class. In all cases, this is the system which works. And therefore, if these skill sets are there, then learning of those subjects becomes so much more easy. So the first thing, and you can say it's almost blasphemous, according to the way that we have been brought up to learn our architecture, but in practice, I find that is absolutely the first thing that we need to do, and that is imitation. Imitation is there because architecture is actually a very hands-on profession. It's a very hands-on work. Okay, it really does not require teaching in the true sense of the word. What it requires is coaching. Right? So when we are talking of coaching and when we are talking of learning a skill for this profession, the first thing that we got to do is to be able to imitate what is considered to be good. It's like when you're learning cricket. Okay, what does the coach want you to do? He wants you to do what's called a copybook style forward defensive stroke. First step, cricket coaching 101. You have to just copy from that book how it is done. So imitation here is very important, is for essaying a base case. Whatever you have in your hand, first of all, we'll come to it why all of this I'm talking in the mode of first problematizing something and then finding solutions to it. Why I have found that to be a good or the best way rather to do it. I'll come to that later. But here, what I'm saying is that the first essay, the first trial of a base case, okay, has to come from imitation. Very simply put, if suppose you give an exercise of designing a house in a jungle, or designing what you may call a farmhouse, or you're designing a place, a house in isolation surrounded by nature, the first thing the student should do, or I like the student to get to do, is to say, my house will be like falling water. Let me see if it works for me. My house will be like Farnsworth's house. Let me see if it works for me. Just imitate. Okay, after all, even Philip Johnson just imitated Mies and became famous in his own right. Of course, now he's become infamous too for doing other things. But otherwise, that is the base. You start with imitation. That's how your training in music starts, by just copying sur for sur, the established ragas. That's what you do. Okay, so imitation is the first skill set. If you can imitate correctly, then you can start testing your proposition, whether it works on something which already exists or not. The second skill set is manipulation. Now, this, I'll tell you, is the most difficult. So we are talking of real things. We are talking of physical forms. We are talking of spaces which are actually, very tangible when they are enclosed in physical forms. And the skill set we want the student to develop is that you should be able to imagine these forms, to construe these forms in your mind without actually doing anything physically, and to manipulate them in your head. This is a room, this is a cuboid, and it is attached to another form, another space that is cylindrical, because the room is the space which is my bedroom or my workroom or whatever, and the cylinder is the transition space or the connecting space through which I travel to reach another cuboid. Okay. How do I manipulate this in my mind without actually playing with these cuboids and cylinders is one of the most important skill sets, one of the most important skills that we need our students to have. The third is coordination of multiple, simultaneous, but disjointed assembly lines. What does this mean? It means that in the mind, lots of things should be playing. Okay. If they're not playing, then there's something wrong. If they're not playing, it means that you're not stimulating the student enough. It means that you're not confusing the student enough, possibly. Okay. So there need to be multiple simultaneous but disjointed assembly lines. They are putting various things together. So in one place, I'm putting this cuboid and cylinder of my rooms together. In another place, I'm putting together the boundary of my plot and the road and the gate and the guardhouse. I'm putting those things together in another place. So this is getting done here, that is getting done here. Okay. Multiple assembly lines are happening in different places of the mind, but I'm able to coordinate the development of the assembly in all these multiple lines simultaneously. I jump from this place, I supervise a little bit of that. I jump to another place, I supervise a little bit of that. And why do I do that? I do that in the hope that 3 days from now, all these assembly lines, whatever is produced, I will be able to converge the product of one into another. Articulation of thought and expression of constructs in real space. What it really means is drawings and models. It just sounds nice to write it like that. Of course, that's for slide composition also, but I'm really saying drawings and models. Drawings and models are very important as tools of communication. Tools of communication not only to someone else, but tools of communication to yourself. So when you're imagining in virtual space, when you're manipulating forms in virtual space, sometimes you need to confirm by articulating them in real space that, yes, this is what I was imagining. Is this going to be like this? Then I read it back to myself and say, if it's going to be like this, then I don't like it, however wonderful that thought might have been. Or if it is going to be like this, I can tweak it to become even better. This comes from an ability to draw and to model. Okay. And there's a very important reason why it is in the fourth place. Okay. I will tell you about that. And the fifth place, I'm saying the skill to validate developed idea through prototype testing. Okay, so this is really out of the design methodology course which I teach. So finally, in that, the point is that having done something, having imitated, having manipulated, having coordinated various things, having put all the products of various different assembly lines, like a car coming into place, having put them all together, and then having made a drawing of it or a model of it, and seen for yourself that, yeah, you like this or you don't like this, that is not the validation. Liking is not validation. So your idea has to be validated by the prototype testing. Prototype testing is by saying that if I'm doing this, will it actually stand up? Do I really know how it will stand up? Well, at this point of time, I don't know if the entire thing will stand up. Let me see if only this part of this design of mine, if I was to make it stand up, how will I do it? So I make a structural framing plan. It doesn't have to be the structural framing plan of the entire building. It can just be the structural framing plan of a part of the building. Okay. And I can say that, yes, this may work this way, and I can extrapolate for the rest of the building too. Structure framing is just one of those testing points of your developed idea. All of this needs to be done with a certain mental framework. Okay. Let's look at, we all have been to Dilwara temple, for example. I'm sure we have seen the exquisite marble carving there. Okay. It's not the only one such place. There are many places all over India where we see exquisite stone carving in which entire stones are hollowed out, and inside that hollowed out stone there is another stone ball which is lurking somewhere. Okay. It's part of the same stone, but completely disjointed from it. And then you can actually put in your finger and raise the ball and play with it. It will not come out of that outer stone cage, which is of the same piece as the ball is. Okay. But the ball and the cage now are completely separate. This is the kind of carving that we are, used to, we were used to be doing in our ancient times. Such was our prowess. Okay. Now, imagine the real process of this happening. Can we even think that this process would have been completely linear? Aankh band karke with a, with blinkers on their eyes, the sculptor would have gone on cut, doing it, okay, sequentially with so many number of strokes, and there would have been a prescribed method for it. And in the end of it, the cage and the ball would have become separate. Can we imagine a process which would have happened like this? Huh? Or would it have been a process in which one wrong stroke would make the entire stone useless? You would have to start all over again. That would call for, how strong a mind to say that, no, it's gone useless. I have to start over all over again. Okay. That is one of the most important attitudes that the student has to be equipped with. That's why it's at the bottom, resilience. So that being the final crowning glory, if the student can actually reach that stage where failure is not a deterrent. The failure is just spurring on to do better next time. The other things, that is sensitization to the context, we all know, yes. There is so much of story which enables the student through history, sociology, and so on. So many things we talk about to sensitize the student as to, you got to understand people, you got to understand how they will behave, you got to understand what their reaction will be to the kind of spaces that you are creating. Okay, will it make them happy? Will they run away from it? Will they get scared of it? All these are things that you have to imagine based on the stories we tell you from the past, based on the studies we have done in the present in different circumstances of things which are similar to what you're designing. Empathetic to all the stakeholders. You must take care of who's going to use it, and you must also take care of who's actually going to pay for it. You also have to take care of who is actually going to make it. All of these must create in you, the student, the confidence of what has been done. To not be worried, to not be unsure of what has been created, because it has been created with the sensitization, and it has been created with the empathy, and it has then gone on to the testing level where we are saying that the student needs to be self-critical. Self-critical does not mean that the student has to be doubtful, okay, but the student has to have the ability to clear their own doubts. To first of all look at it and say that this is what I have done. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. What are the imperfections? These are the imperfections. Next round, I can clear some of them. Am I happy with what I have done? Not quite. Next round, I will do some more. Will I reach perfection? Perhaps not. But that process of being able to find out your own mistakes and then go on to correct them in the next round is very important. That's why I'm putting here an attitude of being self-critical and then enterprising. It should not have to be someone else who has to tell me to do all these things. I have to take the initiative. That is the attitude of the student. Okay, so these are only some. I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list, but I'm saying these are only some of those attitudes which I try to develop in my students. And if I get to this point, if I get only 3 or 4 out of 6, I say it's a good thing. But I start from ensuring that the bottom is there. So even if you're not sensitized to the context, doesn't matter. Sometime you will get to it. But you will get to it sometime only if you're resilient and you're enterprising. So those are things which we want to have in our students. How do I get there? So how do I get there? These are some things which I kind of mentally pictured. It was very, very tough and of course tedious to actually find visuals of all those, to put them here into this very, very targeted presentation. So I just thought I will be able to put down the headings and be able to talk to you about it. So these are things which I would say are things which happened, let's say, in my first year when I studied architecture. And then when I was teaching first year, okay, and I was actually having students to deal with. And these are the things which I employed at that time. So you can say my first year at SPA New Delhi. And then, yes, I did have a very, very curious first year when I was, when SPA Vijayawada started. So there we had a completely different, context, a completely different ball game, completely different environment of doing things. So whatever was being, whatever I had an experience of doing many, many times over while teaching first year at SPA New Delhi, just couldn't be done there. Okay, so a completely set of new things had to be devised for that. But these are things which I would say I endeavored to do. Okay, so the first thing was to arouse curiosity. That is absolutely the most important thing. To if that is done, everything else is like smooth as butter. What is this aroused curiosity? You might say that here is a student who's chosen to be in architecture, okay, who has passed an exam and got selected through it. So the student, why arouse curiosity? The student would be curious anyway. No, it's not so. Because lots of students we have no idea what they are doing. They have no idea what they are getting into. So for them, it's very important that they need to become curious students. School education, as we know, is a perfect recipe for killing curiosity. Okay, and a lot of our higher education programs are no different. They are only meant for yes, attending classes, listening to lectures, maybe making notes, but finally about reading books in the library in the preparatory leaves and writing those papers and getting those grades and getting the cumulative grade and passing out and getting the degree, and then looking for employment with the help of the degree in the hand. Professions, on the other hand, and we are talking of professions which are specifically in our country, there are 4 professions. Architecture is one, the other 3 being medicine and law and accountancy. Okay, these are the professions. Professions have to deal with people. They have to be answerable to their clients. Okay, so yes, now we do have people who are professionals who work for companies, but those professionals, those companies are in turn answerable to clients on a very, very close basis. So it's very important here that the student is not in this frame where they think that just everything is written in the books, everything can be learned from the books, and that they do not need to do anything. They do not need to be having any desire to discover anything by themselves. So arousing curiosity is about arousing that desire to discover. And how do you arouse that desire to discover? It has got nothing to do with buildings. And that's why I say that the first semester of learning architecture really has got nothing to do with buildings at all. It is to do with this facility that you want to develop in yourself. It is innate, again, curiosity is innate, but how do you actually get a student to bring it out? Is by sending them on expeditions. So you have to send them on expeditions. Those expeditions possibly maybe outside the school building, maybe even outside the campus. Go and find that out. Now that go and find that out better be an interesting thing. Okay. You have to give a hint of what might be discovered. Go and see that. You will be surprised with what you find. That is when you arouse curiosity. So I do that kind of exercise quite often. Send students out to do something. It may be anything to do with what they will observe out on the road, or maybe something they will see in the bus in which they are traveling, but anything to do with this fact that, out of what happens to them every day, there is something interesting which they did not know. So that is the first thing. The second is observing nature. Our greatest teacher is nature. Everything but everything that we have learned is through nature. So in doing that, one of the very important things, one of the, let's say, the simplest exercises that one can do to understand structure is to understand why trees stand, how trees stand up, how different shapes of trees actually stand up. What are their root structures? What are their branching structures? What happens to a tree when you pull down a particular branch? In which way will it bend if it bends? How do large leaves actually feed the tree? This is, you can say, what has this got to do with architecture? This is biology and botany. Yes. That's why I said a broad spectrum knowledge of the sciences. This is part of that. Once you are able to understand these systems, or even not understand, but able to observe these systems and become curious about how they work, that's when you will be sometime curious about how the air conditioning ducting actually works and how the branching system ensures that air reaches everywhere. It's not something which you can explain starting in third year and being taught by a mechanical engineer. No, you can't. This is something which has to start in first year, and from a completely unconnected source. The third, connecting with the ordinary. Connecting with the ordinary, let me give you an example of connecting with the ordinary. And this is again something which I did with the first year students. And the objective again was to get that broad spectrum knowledge of people, of how they live, how they communicate, how they travel. So I'd given them once an exercise which was about the 60 centimeter strip. What was the 60 centimeter strip? It was a 60 centimeter strip between their house and the street, road, gully, whatever, through which you actually got to that house. And in that exercise, which we did, which was it was easier to do because we traveled to some different place, and therefore being collective and being able to do all of it at the same time and being able to do it at a stretch for a whole day was possible. In that 60 centimeter strip, we found that students found, and we as part of the students, so many interesting things happening, including the rejected garbage, including the polythene bags, which would be cleaned off the street, but they would end up against the walls of the boundary walls of the house, and they would never go away. They would just stay there. That's when the students come to realize, oh, this is not good. This is garbage, and this will never go away. That understanding just doesn't suddenly come up in fourth year when you're teaching in them, solid waste management. That knowledge, that understanding has to get developed from these observations. Applying intuition. You give them exercise in which there is nothing to be learned. You are 18-year-old, 17-year-old, you've done many things. Okay, what can you do here which looks like a solution? Finally, stimulus through creation. So one of the things that one does is to give them exercises which have a particular goal. It's a very common exercise and done all over the place. Okay, and yet, it's just so simply fantastic. I haven't found anything as good as it is. And that exercise is the egg drop. I'm sure many of you would have actually done it. Okay, the egg drop is such a superb exercise for engagement. For those of you who are wondering what this egg drop is, I'm sure there are not many, but still I would say it's just a challenge that you have to create a cage inside which is an egg. And when you drop the cage from a height, maybe from the first floor or the second floor, or maybe even higher, and it drops on the ground, the cage should be such that the egg does not break. They know no structure. They have no construction knowledge. Nothing. It's purely intuition. They have stick, they have stones, they have thread, they have glue, they have paper, they have cloth. Everything is the material which is available to them. And they just have to apply what is a hunch. इसको ऐसे करेंगे तो ये नहीं टूटेगा. Every time you do this exercise, you will come up with new innovative solutions which students give you. Okay, this is the kind of thing which really creates the excitement of creation. At the end of it, what will you find? Oh my God, I'm being too slow. Let me rush through this. At the end of it, what you will find is that the stimulus of creation actually propels students into learning more. So they've done something, they have achieved something, that adrenaline flow which comes out of having done something, or anda nahi tuta, it did not break, is an empowerment that every student is looking for. So This is the next part of the teacher's toolkit, which is enable. So the first part was engage. Nothing to do with architecture. You just draw them in. You just make them, how should I say it? There's no better way of saying it. You just make them love you for what you have given them. Okay, that in this class, we have so much excitement, we have so much fun that we want to be in this class is where you have them eating out of your hand. That is the place you want to be. The second step is to enable. Now, to enable this, these are a few things which I always like to do is humanize, liberalize, and democratize. So in many ways, you can say, how do I interact with the students? How do I set up a relationship with the students? And this is my own way. I'm not saying it's a great way or it's a best practice, but I'm saying that for me, it works fantastically. And what is that? I almost like to have the students look upon me as, what do you call, a very senior person who could not pass this class and therefore is with them. So there are, you can say in every class, there are repeaters. So they are kind of little elder to the other. They've been there, they've done that, and they can tell people, nahi, isko aise mat kar. Don't do it like this. I did last year, it did not work. So I'm some person who has been there again and again and again and again and again, and still I'm there. Okay. So I know I've been there and done that, and I'm still willing to learn. And I'm still learning, and I'm still going to be wiser along with you all at the end of the day. That is the kind of humanization I like. And I found that it kind of transcends the period of interaction you will have with people. It means for almost a lifelong relationship when I have students come back to ask a question without hesitation, without any compunctions, even after they've passed 20 years, 21 years, 25 years, after passing out, they have a question, they, without hesitation, call up and ask, ऐसे ऐसे है, आप बता सकते हैं? There's so many new things which I don't know about. I can definitely tell them that, I know some other person who can help you. Great. So, ठीक है, that's okay. Second, resettle the workplace. This is something which works wonders. And that's why I insist that every studio, every place of teaching should be having flexible furniture. Resettling the workplace means the first thing I do in the first class, I said, guys, this is the room. Do you like it? The room always has been settled by the cleaners. Okay. So there are tables, desks, and there are chairs behind it, and they're all in a row. And this way the row is right, this way the columns are right. Everything is settled like that. There's good space between each of them. I said, guys, this is the way it has been given to you. You like this? Nobody likes it. So I give them the freedom. Let's redo up the room. I think that sense of empowerment, of being able to control their own space, is very important to the students. So first of all, I resettled the workspace. I said, okay, let's divide up into 4 groups or 5 groups. And each group, this is your area, this is your area, this is your area, this is your area. You arrange your tables and chairs in the way you like. Wonderful results come out of that. Create topical projects. In creating projects, don't be abstract. Students today are very, very much aware. Okay. If they're not reading newspapers, actually, they are getting news from all over the world on their mobile phones. So somewhere or the other, what's happening in the world, they are aware of that. So in every subject, you can create for them projects which are to do with something which has gone on and something which probably was there on their mobile phone just the day before. It gives a sense of reality. It says that we are in this real world and we are doing things in this real world and we will make this real world better. That's what you want the students to finally have, the feeling at the end of your project. So if there's a project in the news, say that, yes, That's the project we will design. Or if something happened somewhere else and that affected some other thing, and you said, okay, so in Puri, that, near the Jagannath temple, something happened, and there was a mob and a melee, and this is, and so many people got hurt. What was the problem? The problem was, that space outside the temple was not correct. Guys, would you like to redesign it? Okay, that is so real. Set tangible goals. Tangible goals means don't leave the end fuzzy. That, okay, you will have a plan, and everybody who has a plan, it'll just be fine. No, the plan must meet these criteria. Set them down: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, now you have a plan. If it doesn't meet here, all these goals, no, sorry, it is not the solution. Start multiple simple exercises. And this is something which, again and again, because last 4 or 5 years, I'm taking fourth year housing. So I do it in fourth year housing, start multiple simple exercises that I do not start a housing project at all in the first week. I say, let's design a bedroom. Let's design a toilet. Let's put a house together. Let's understand that if there are two houses together, how can we get the maximum amount of common wall while giving both the houses good window in every room? Very, very targeted exercises, simple ones. They usually take 1 studio or maybe 2 studios, never more than a week. Okay, demystify the complexity. So you look at housing and you find, oh my God, what is this? I said, no, none of that is so complex. All of it is just putting together smaller things. And that's how it becomes like this. Yes, it looks complex, but it is not complex. Encourage peer learning out of class. I like to tell my students, why don't you go? So-and-so is doing this in their thesis. Just go and ask them, what did they find out? Incentivize Bala. Bala, as you all know, is building as learning aid. There can be nothing better than the existing building in which you are. Fortunately, we have a building which has got all the possible flaws that can be there in a modern building. So it's great to teach that, this is the way it is here, and you can see what the problem is. You can see, why the water is not draining. You can see why the water is kind of flowing along the column and making it turn black. Okay, those are the kind of things that can be learned by just being in the building in which you are and sending people. Again, these are expeditions. Sending them, go and find out in this building what this whole phenomena is all about. And finally, I would say, know your stuff. So all of this is possible if you know your stuff. And knowing your stuff doesn't mean that yes, I'm an architect, I've got the degree, I'm possibly a PhD. It doesn't mean that you know your stuff. Okay? So to know your stuff is important, because when students know that you know, that's when you command their respect. And finally, we come to ennoble, which is, I would say, the capping of the enabling is by recognition of what has been done. So appreciate effort and promptness. This is very important. How do you appreciate effort and promptness? Many ways to do it. Okay. Of course, marks is one, but not the only one. Marks, of course, students find it's a very, very tangible, visible result of the appreciation. Okay. So if that be so, I say mark properly. I always insist that marking has to be done by using the entire crease. So if there is 1 to 100 or 0 to 100 range of marking, you mark from 0 to 100. If you have not given anybody 100 in the exercise which you are marking, there is something wrong. either you don't know what you were expecting, or you were not able to coach them enough to give you what you were expecting. And therefore, nobody achieved what you were expecting. And that's why your mark is less than 100. If you have very clearly described to yourself in your mind, and perhaps if required by the administration, described it, in formally also, what is now called the rubric as to what the marking will be on, then it should be possible for you to give at least 100 in your class, if not to a good percentage, maybe 7, 8, 10% of the people should get 100 in the exercise which you said. Otherwise, your exercise is wrong. So use the crease. Okay. Don't just say that it's not perfect, so I will mark 90. You are not being truthful. You are not perfect to pinpoint what you really wanted. Reward achievement. This is very important. The achievement should be rewarded when it happens. And it's not to say that the achievement will happen only at the end of the semester. Achievement happens every day. So at the time it happens, it has to be rewarded. Create multiple reward opportunities. So if you are doing targeted things every week, then automatically those multiple reward opportunities get created, and you can actually almost on a daily basis have a leaderboard kind of thing where you say that today's winner is this guy. Publish students' work. Now you can say कि हाँ SPA में तो जैसे बहुत publications होते हैं, नहीं होते, but I have find that whenever I have done that, those students have performed like wizards in the next semester, in the next class. Because publication is one of the greatest achievements that one can look for. Associate students in projects and research. So whatever work you are doing, when you associate the student in that work, then that recognition means that you are saying that, yes, you are almost my equal. You're coming up, okay? You are doing things like I would want to, and maybe someday you will just be exactly like me. Devolve responsibilities. Get them to do things that you would otherwise do. That is a great reward for achievement. And at the bottom, as I'm saying, share the podium, pass the mic. Okay? Let the students stand with you. Pass the mic. Let them speak in your place. This is, I will give an example of a student who was really doing badly. And I asked the student that, this is something which you have to do in another subject. So how about doing that very well? Now the student didn't understand why a design teacher was telling them to do something which he was doing in some other subject. But somehow I could convince that, yes, you don't worry about what's happening in your design class, you just do that. And then I was able to tweak what he was doing in that other subject, bring it into the design studio. And then I said that, guys, these were your problems. And this guy has done some work which is related to that. He is going to give you a presentation on that. And you should have seen the kind of response which the student had. So at first the student was diffident. Sir, मतलब मेरे को खड़ा कर दे रहे हो आप सबके सामने, मैं कैसे करूंगा, मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगा. So I told him, I'm there alongside. If there's any problem, don't worry, I'm there to continue. But he did not really want that. And so he gave a perfect presentation. And after that, he says, I can do it, sir. Okay. So now we come to the end here where I say that the best practice of teaching architecture and planning is to practice. Practice architecture and planning. Do it in real life. Do real architecture in your life. Okay. That is when you will be able to teach architecture well. You cannot learn your cricket from a cricket statistician. You cannot learn your cricket from a cricket journalist. You have to learn your cricket from a cricketer. Your coach has to be a practicing cricketer or has to have done enough cricket playing to be able to tell you how it is done right. So staying in running condition by constantly doing what you expect students to do, that is the secret to good teaching of architecture. You have to be undoubtedly on the top of your game. Your students must know that this guy can do this project better than anybody else can. How many of us can actually say that? But that is what our aim should be. Okay, that we are on the top of the game as far as design is concerned. In the design studio or in the construction studio, we know exactly what gives. In construction, in structures class, we know our structures perfectly well because we have been designing them. We've actually been doing it. We have been practicing it. And therefore, we know the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But remember, you're only as good as the last project you delivered. And this is the end where I say that all of this is in the past. Going forward, things are going to be very different. New horizons, a climate of change is coming. Lots of changes are coming. The major indicators for intervention, which of course, Mr. Bugga must have delineated quite much in detail in the first session, but I'm here picking up only two, and two things which ask for many things in our ways of teaching to change, and that is sustainability, something we have discovered, the whole world is talking about, okay? And basically, it is pointing out that we have been doing things wrong. The way we are building, the way we are creating our settlements, all of that is impacting the chances of our continued existence. It's hurting the environment. This is one point. The second is that we have lots and lots of young people with lots of energy who want something to do and who have to be given something to do so that their energies are well utilized. And for this, in the education area, these two things come out of the new education policy, which is the choice-based curriculum. Custom-tailored programs to best fit emerging social needs and diverse talents. Okay, multiple entry and exit, a big hot potato, a complete seminar on itself, is enabling the fitness level to match available skill up time. So everybody doesn't have so much time to be educated. They have diverse needs. They have, there's so much only investment they can make at this time to become educated and to become productive. Can the education system, can our curriculum, can we teach enough architecture in a shorter time to make this person useful? This is our challenge. And how will we meet this challenge? We will meet this challenge if we recognize that the school or the program is not the only place for learning. The students are living their life. And when we are saying that you have to learn about life so that you do architecture, can we utilize all that they are living as part of the learning of architecture? Right? So with that, I will end.